Yeah, who says the Brewers don't spend in free agency? They went out and got themselves a free agent pitcher. We'll tell you about him and how things are looking for the Brewers after the weekend. Some hot, some not. Jose Quintana, we'll talk about him next here on Locked On Brewers.
You are Locked On Brewers, your daily Milwaukee Brewers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Some of you out there thought that, the Brewers need more pitching. Pitching. Some of the national pundits said, pitching. The Brewers need to go out and get themselves one of these pitchers that are still on the market. So heard some of these national guys do it. Well, depending on where you come on that side of the deal, I think they need help at third base. But they went, and I think they made a strength stronger here with getting Jose Quintana. I don't know if he was necessary to get, but apparently the Brewers do. And we'll talk about that coming up here in a little bit and where he fits into the Brewer rotation. Who might be the odd man out? Chuck Freeman here on Locked On Brewers, part of Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. Good to have you along here as we start on Monday, and the news drops shortly after noon today about Jose Quintana signing a one-year deal with the Brewers for about $5 million with incentives at all. Now the Brewers, this is a classic Brewers signing right here. The Brewers apparently had been negotiating with him for quite some time, and then they got turned off by it. Probably Quintana wanted a higher price, but 1 year, $5 million. That sounds about right for the Milwaukee Brewers, doesn't it? I mean, I'm not being negative here and all that, but I'm just, for those of us who want him to spend, the Brewers, Mark Antanasio, to spend some monies. This is where they went. 1 year, $5 million, and it might turn out to be a great deal. Now the Mets, they chose, if you look at it, they traded out for Frankie Montas. And what they pay him about $17 million a year. And he was with the Brewers last year. So they signed Frankie Montas, didn't sign Quintana, and the Brewers saved probably maybe $12 million in this deal if they would have signed Montas. But the bottom line here is the Mets chose Montas over Quintana. Kind of see how that one works out all season long. But I guess you can never use enough starting pitching, as you know, because injuries are bound to happen. And here's how the Brewers line it up right now in the rotation. Freddie Peralta will be the opening day starter. Cortez, you would think, be number 2. Myers, 3. Savali, 4. Quintana, 5. And that leaves, I guess, Ashby as, unless they go to a 6-man rotation, which I don't see them doing. But let's say maybe Ashby fits in with the 6-man rotation. But when they signed Ashby a few years ago, I thought there was every intention to put Ashby in the starting rotation. Now, tonight, he's going to make another start. He did not look very good in his first start with the Brewers down in spring training. Not very good at all. He wanted to come through healthy, but the numbers just weren't there for Ashby in his first start. So it's funny they signed Quintana because if you look at it, Peralta, Cortez, Myers, Savale, Quintana. And you can play this game too. What happens when Brandon Woodruff returns? If and when he returns, what happens there? Some of you talked about Gasser returning. He's not supposed to be back till August. And again, a guy who's coming back from Tommy John or any type of injury, especially a Tommy John, whatever we get out of Gasser this year, I think is a bonus. I really do. So if he does come back this year, great, bonus. If he doesn't, I'm good with him giving another whole season and next off season to rehab because he's got a bright future, and especially a young arm like that or anybody coming back from Tommy John, not going to rush him at all. And Woody, whenever he comes back, but it's interesting. I didn't think they'd go out and sign themselves a pitcher. I didn't, but they obviously think right now, maybe Ashby, they don't feel comfortable with him in the 5 spot. I would have been fine with him in the 5 spot. He might be better off in the bullpen in long relief, and that's where they're going to put him. DL Hall, I wonder how long DL Hall is going to miss here with that lat pull, because he's another guy they got with the visions of him being a starter. When the Brewers got DL Hall in the Corbin Burns deal, starting rotation is where they pegged him, in the starting rotation. And I think Ashby, too, when they signed him to the contract a couple of years ago, started rotation for Ashby. So as a result of Hall being injured, Ashby, I don't feel like they feel comfortable with him in that 5 spot. They went out and signed Jose Quintana. And I'm tired of hearing about him being a Brewer killer. Yeah, his ERA was under 3. Brewers got him in the biggest moment in 2018, although he did pitch 6 strong innings against the Brewers last year in the wild card round. He was 9-7 lifetime versus the Brewers with ERA of under 3. Last year with the Mets, 10-10, 37 starts, 3.75 earned run average. I think he had a pretty good year, Quintana, last year for Milwaukee. Gives the Brewers a left-handed look, which is fine. They add him to a couple of the other lefty they have in that rotation with Cortez. And I don't hate the deal. I mean, it's only $5 million. I just was surprised that the Brewers went out and did this. First of all, signed anybody who's got a pulse for a free agent deal that's looking for anything over $1 million or a minor league deal. But again, they apparently have been after him for a while, but the price was just right. $5 million with a loaded bunch of incentives. You look at Quintana's postseason numbers last year: 11 innings, 11 strikeouts, 0 earned runs. 6 of those innings were against the Brewers in the wild card. Still, you look at this rotation, the argument is there's not an ace among them. I think Woodruff is the best pitcher if he returns back, if he gets back to his normal form. But I don't feel badly about this rotation. Well, some people out there, just checking Twitter today, and some of you guys had written me, aren't real sold on this rotation. I think it's fine. Considering where the Brewers, what they do with payroll or no payroll, my only complaint about this rotation is there's no stopgap guy. There's no guy who's going to get you that 7 innings of 1-hit baseball or 6 innings of 2-hit baseball. Now there's guys there's this team who's got potential parole. They all can. They all have that capability, but there's not one lockdown starter. And I think we all are in agreement, if we were in doubt last year going into the season when we thought that maybe we discussed whether or not Freddie Peralta is a number 1 starter. I think we're all in concert on that, thinking that he is a 3 starter at best, but he's a number 1 in this rotation. But I think you have 5 solid guys. And with or without Quintana, I was still okay with Ashby. I'm curious to see him pitch tonight and see how he's going to do. But you have a lot of depth right now in this rotation. But injuries, you have some backup there in case some injuries. You don't plan for injuries. I'm just saying, you have some depth. You have, a few guys, 7 or maybe even 8 guys who could be in this starting rotation. So, and the Brewers were after him, well, mildly back in 2017 when Quintana came to the White Sox. I know my partner at the time on the radio, Bart Winkler, he was all in on Quintana and was upset when Quintana went to the Cubs. I wasn't very upset about it. And Quintana's have a nice year. There's no doubt about it. But when I see this about him being a Brewers killer, I'm one of these guys, when he's on the mound, I don't face the Brewers. I was never in fear of the guy whatsoever. It wasn't like, Clayton Kershaw was on the hill when I saw Jose Quintana. Not at all. I didn't fear him at all. But for some reason, he's got this reputation of being a Brewer killer. And of course, but the last time he pitched against the Brewers in the wild card last year, he gave up no runs over 6 innings. So, a lot to watch there. And Quintana, as we're talking right there, still has got to pass his physical. We'll see. Assuming he passes his physical, 1 year, $5 million. Shouldn't break the bank for the Milwaukee Brewers. Not at all. All right. We come back. Brewers add to their front office. The Brewers add to their front office with another former Met. Get to that coming up next here on Locked On Brewers. Locked On Brewers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. This episode brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel. Hey, is this a time to get in on all the action right now? Baseball coming up, the NBA, college basketball tournaments, starting very, very soon here with these conference tournaments. And when the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started. There's no better place to get in on all the action than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game so that even if you miss the opening tip-off, you'll still want to bet on that fourth quarter comeback. You know how much I like teams that are dogs going into the second half. You get good lines. You might even get a bigger payout if you combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. Right now, FanDuel customers, you can get $150 deposited in your account in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. So you bet $5, you win it, you're going to get $150 of bonus bets in your account. So visit FanDuel.com, join today, FanDuel.com, take your shot at $150 in bonus bets when you win that first $5 bet. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Chuck Freeman here on Locked On Brewers, part of Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. Wasn't like I was doing a victory dance when they got Jose Quintana. It was just great to see that the Brewers had a pulse as far as the free agent market. I feel like this offseason was kind of like 1995, didn't it? 96. This felt like the 90s again with the Milwaukee Brewers. Their big signing was a guy making $5 million. Back then, it was a guy probably making $600,000. Jose Quintana, 1 year, $5 million incentives. Just about right for the Milwaukee Brewers. Brewers went out and got themselves Billy Eppler from the Mets front office. Been a general manager with the Mets, lost his job with the Mets when he did that phantom injured list thing. Now, I'm not going to hold that against them at all. But from what I understand about Billy Eppler, pretty good scout, and he loves the scout. His #1 deal, what he loves doing, is scouting. And he's going to join the Brewers front office, and he's going to get into their scouting department, which I think is a great deal. Because as we know with the Milwaukee Brewers, scouting, player development is huge for the Milwaukee Brewers. And the Brewers need scouts, or they need sharp minds, it is. And they already got a lot of sharp minds. And this is the reason why the Brewers have been in the postseason 6 of the last 7 years, is because they have some sharp minds in that front office. They are able to make chicken salad out of chicken, let's say. And a guy like Billy Eppler, who's coming from the Mets, now, you know, he's going to come from the Mets. He's got to realize that the resources here aren't the same as they are in New York. The fans are great. The building is great. The front office, well, the hands are tied. So this is where scouting comes in. And this is where a guy like Billy Eppler, who, again, from all indications, is loves the scout, wanted to get back into scouting, and he's going to fit right in with the Milwaukee Brewers. So I think that's a pretty good thing, getting Billy Eppler. Don't hold the phantom IL thing against him. Someone tattletaled on him. That's something that's done quite often in Major League Baseball. Quite often. I mean, disguising players who were hurt on a phantom IL, that's been long overdue, and somehow they made Billy Eppler an example. All right. Want to get to my guy, Rhys Hoskins here, who is tearing it up. My guy Hoskins. 4 for 8 and 3 home runs. Looks to be in great shape, Hoskins. And I said, this is the deal where with Hoskins, it's not a make or break year, but it's a year that if he wants to continue to make north of $15 million a year, he needs to have a big season. And so far, 4 for 8, 3 home runs, limited playing time. Rhys looks, like I said, in great physical condition, and he put one out the other night, or Sunday might have been, Saturday, that still flying. It is still flying, flying into a cactus in Phoenix. But Rhys Hoskins, love what I see. As I've told you, I don't take what I see in spring training too seriously, and my history of knowledge on that speaks well on that. But Hoskins, I am encouraged. I'd rather have him be 4 for 8 than 0 for 8, but he's got the 3 home runs so far. Freddie Peralta struggled in his first outing over the weekend. He pitched 2 innings, 3 hits, 2 runs, 2 home runs he gave up. That's only a first outing. and it's spring training. So don't say too much about Freddie Peralta. Don't come down on him for having a bad outing in spring training. Now, Tyler Black finally got into the playing field. I had a little bit of a back issue, and he finally played over the weekend. Went 0 for 3. Tyler Black needs to get into some games here if he is going to make the team. As we always say, you can't make the club when you're in the tub, and Tyler Black has been in the tub. So he comes out and has an 0 for 3 game. Pat Murphy said some great things about Black. It doesn't sound like Black is going to play third base. It sounds like he's going to be first base, DH. Maybe some outfield, but Tyler Black, rule him out for anybody who thinks he's going to have a shot at third base. And as far as Caleb Durbin trying to earn a spot on this team, and yeah, I don't read a lot into numbers in spring training, but for guys who are trying to make the team, numbers are a big deal. Caleb Durbin so far is 3 of 18. 3 of 18 at the plate. That doesn't bode well for a guy who's trying to earn a spot on this team as maybe one of those platoon guys over at third base. So he certainly needs to pick it up. But like veterans, and I mentioned Hoskins hitting the 3 home runs. Again, I don't read a great deal in it, but Durbin 3 for 18. Certainly, he continues at that pace. He's going to start the year in AAA Nashville. How about Sal Frelick going yard the other day? Hitting a tater out of the ballpark. That was cool to see. He's 6 of 16 so far in that home run. Craig Yoho continues to be carving up hitters. He's got on the year 3 on young spring training so far through a week of games, 3 innings pitched. He's given up 1 hit, but more importantly, that changeup continues to buckle hitters. He went 3 up, 3 down. Good morning, good afternoon, good night the other day, striking out 3 hitters in 1 inning. So that was great to see from Craig Yoho. But Brewers get back action tonight, 7 o'clock. 7 o'clock, they're taking on the Reds. First night game of the year. I think it's going to be on MLB Network from what I saw. I'm pretty sure it is. I saw the promos a couple of times on MLB Network. So the Brewers have a rare spring training night game. Then they got a day game tomorrow. But this is a chance to see Ashby pitch tonight and to see what Ashby actually has in store for and see how long he can go and let him hopefully bounce back from that terrible outing in his first outing. Chuck Freeman here on Locked On Brewers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. Great to have you along here on Locked On Brewers. By the way, you get us on Google, Spotify, Apple, wherever you download your audio podcasts. Our audio podcasts are right there. We're the number 1 Brewers podcast on the internet for a simple reason, because of you great Brewers fans out there making us great. So please hit us up there. Also, please hit us up on Twitter, Chuck Freeman, FREIMUND. Some of you guys have DM'd me a little bit here, and I appreciate it. Talking about the Brewers signing yesterday and today, and most of you, this podcast hadn't even come out yet, and most of you guys are saying typical Brewers signing, but nonetheless excited that the Brewers sign Jose Quintana. We'll get to some of your emails, your DMs, and your questions a little bit later on in the week. And by the way, you also get our podcast on YouTube, our growing YouTube page. Please, if you get us on the podcast, on the audio podcast, and there won't my notes right on the floor. Reach down, first time in 3 years, I dropped my notes on the floor. Even if you get our audio podcast, please hit us up on YouTube, search Locked On Brewers, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell. Always, please hit the like. That'll always help the podcast here on Locked On Brewers. Let me know what you think about Jose Quintana. And on YouTube, you could drop your comments as well. Right on our YouTube page, just go right down at the bottom of the page and just let me know what you have. Let me know anything you want about the Milwaukee Brewers. I'm here to talk Brewers baseball with you and see where we go. So far, so good with the Milwaukee Brewers in spring training. There's a few things to like down there. The health, I'm curious about a couple of these guys. We talked about Bukowskis going on the injured list last week, but a very, very curious move by signing Quintana today. Got to tell you, did not see that coming from the Milwaukee Brewers. Did not see that coming. Not at all. Would I rather have had a third baseman that they spent their money on if they were going to be so frugal? A couple of weeks ago, one of those other guys who signed for a 1-year, $5 million deal. Well, apparently the Brewers feel they need pitching, starting pitching ahead of the third base spot. And all I hear every year, and this was back in the season last year as well, Brewer fans, man, we need pitching. We need pitching. Why can't they go out and get their pitching? The pitching staff wasn't the problem last year. I thought the starting pitching was great last year because everybody kept on complaining about the starting pitching, yet they'd have a guy like Bryce Wilson go out and pitch him 6 or 7 innings. I thought this, and Savale and what he gave them, and Myers. I never look at the Brewers starting rotation as saying, well, unless they're going to go out there and get themselves a mammoth ace, which they'll never do. Spend a lot of money getting if they got themselves a Jack Flaherty, I would love it. If they went out and got themselves a Jack Flaherty, I would have loved it. But I never had a problem with the rotation. If you look back at their games last year, their rotation kept them in games. Their bullpen kept them in games. The rotation was fine. It's the offense that I think, when I look at the number one thing the Milwaukee Brewers are their biggest detriment is their offense. Are they going to score enough runs here this season? And I think third base being a production spot, well, I have a little issue with that when they have a third baseman that who they really don't know is going to be their everyday third baseman. And none of those guys are going to hit double-digit home runs. None of them. So we can keep on beefing up that starting rotation and complaining about it. But look back at the numbers last year. You're going to see so many quality starts these guys made. So many. And then look back and say, well, really, it was the offense. Look back in the postseason last year, too. What was it? Yeah, Devin Williams gave the 3-run home run. But I thought the starting pitching was pretty good. In fact, I thought both times. Even, Corbin Burns 2 seasons ago, they never picked him up. But I don't think it's the starting rotation isn't the detriment on this team. It's not the issue. It's scoring runs. And we'll see if they're going to be able to do that this year. That's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Brewers. Hey, again, find us on Google, Spotify, Apple, wherever you download your podcasts. We are there. And, of course, our growing YouTube page, search Locked On Brewers. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the bell. That'll alert you every time we drop an episode here on Locked On Brewers. Please join us on Twitter as well. Chuck Freeman, Freimund. Hit me up on Twitter as well. And, of course, if breaking news happens, we'll always be here breaking it right on our, like we did earlier today, releasing a Jose Quintana short. That's going to do it for the show today. We will see you tomorrow because we are here every day, Monday through Friday. Locked On Brewers, part of Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day.